think about some famous walls out there. So what can we think of? Great Wall of China, the Green Monster at Fenway Park, the Wailing Wall, the Berlin Wall, all these big famous walls. And walls are great for certain purposes, right? Walls are really good for separating things and for holding things up. But, you know, sometimes walls are bad because they separate things. In Ephesians chapter 2, we want to talk about this. Jesus breaks down certain walls, and then Jesus builds buildings. So in Ephesians chapter 1, we were encouraged to see that it's all about Jesus, about his will and his plan and his purposes. In Ephesians chapter 2, it's a continuation of that, of the centrality of Jesus. Because there used to be a wall between sinful humans and the perfect creator. And there used to be a wall that separated the Jewish believers from the Gentile believers. Jesus broke down both of those walls and instead started building a building. So number one, that wall between humans and the sinful creator. Looking at Ephesians chapter 2 and verses 1 through 3, it describes us as the walking dead, right? It says we were dead, we were walking according to the course of this world, according to this prince, that is Satan, the enemy. It says we were children of wrath. And it says we were just as the others. In other words, there's no difference really between me and any unsaved person. Before I was saved, I was just as the others. That's what it says. I was part of that walking dead. But Jesus broke the wall. The thing that couldn't be broken, the wall that separated sinful humans and kept them in a completely separate category between them and that perfect God. Verses 4, it says, "But God, who is rich in mercy, because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in trespasses," it says he made us alive together with Christ. By grace you've been saved, and raised us up. He didn't just save us and leave us. He raised us up together, made us sit together in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus, that in the ages to come he might show the exceeding riches of his grace and his kindness toward us in Christ Jesus. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It's the gift of God. It's not of works. In case anybody wants to try to boast of that, it is not of works. It says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." Jesus broke that wall. Now also there's the wall between Jews and Gentiles. And so in verses 11 through 12 of this chapter, it talks about the separation there. And it says that Gentiles were separate from the Hebrew people. They were having no hope. They were without God in the world. Now, I would argue that that was not strictly a racial barrier, as some people would say, but instead it wasn't, because outsiders were able to convert into Judaism and marry into the Jewish race. In fact, in the lineage of Jesus, there were at least one or two folks who were not racially Jewish. So not to go too deep into that, but Jesus broke that barrier, whether you call it a racial barrier, a culture barrier, the barrier of their nationality. Jesus broke that wall. Look at this in verses 13 through 16. "For the Jews and Gentiles who put their trust in him, Jesus broke the wall." Now it says in Christ Jesus, "You who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace, who has made both one and has broken down the middle wall of separation, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, that is the law of commandments contained in the ordinance, so as to create in himself one new man from the two, thus making peace, that he might reconcile them both to God in one body through the cross, thereby putting to death the enmity. Think about this. When Jesus was put to death, he was busy putting to death the enmity, the eneminess, the hostility that was there. Satan may have thought he was putting Jesus to death, but while he thought he was doing that, Jesus was putting to death the enmity, breaking down that wall of separation. Now, when Jesus puts something to death, it's not coming back. You don't need to try to resuscitate it. You can do as much CPR as you want. It ain't coming back. It is dead as a doornail. Paul is telling here the Gentiles, he's saying, Jesus broke that wall down. Don't feel like outsiders, and don't let the Jewish believers make you feel like outsiders. Be encouraged. Jesus broke the wall. And, we might think, we don't think about those barriers anymore. But the principle still applies to us. Think about the church on a worldwide scale, or even a county-wide scale, right? Sometimes we don't get along because of all kinds of different reasons. But we are one body regardless of our culture, regardless of our ethnicity or our nationality. Now, as we look at the rest of this, think about one of those time-lapse videos you might see on a home improvement TV show. Except picture this. Okay, the chief cornerstone is put down. Okay, so imagine this landscape and the chief cornerstone is put down. And then, of course, as a time-lapse video happens, you've got these clouds going by and then people walking really fast and putting things down. After the chief cornerstone, you get all the other foundation stones put down. And then as the video continues, you see these other stones come in, and windows and these cedar beams and metal coming from all over the planet as this exquisite architectural masterpiece takes form. And it's still growing. Look at this, verses 19 through 22. Now, therefore, you are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God, the family of God, having been built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom the whole building being fitted together grows. Notice we mentioned that it still grows into a holy temple in the Lord, in whom also you are being built, continuing to be built together for a dwelling place of God in the Spirit. So Ephesians 1 reminded us that our lives are all about Jesus and his will and his pleasure, his purpose in us. Ephesians 2 encourages us that Jesus made the way by breaking the wall between sinful humans and a perfect God, by breaking the wall between followers of Gentile nationality and Jewish nationality and different cultures. By his will and his grace, we can be saved. By his will and his grace, we are being formed into a absolutely magnificent building with all the believers of the world, of every people group, every economic status, and every language. That's exciting. So yes, Jesus broke down the walls, and now Jesus is building a building.